Bhagava Araham Samma Sambuddho Swakato Yena Bhagavata Dhammo Supatipanno Yassa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Tamayang Bhagavantam Sadhammang Sasangang Ime Sakare Yatarhanaro Pitehi Abhipujayam Sadhu no Bhante Bhagava Suchirapari Bhutopi Pachima Janatanuka Pamanasa Sakare Dugata Panakara Bhute Patiganhatu Amhakam Digratam Hitaya Sukhaya Arham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Vakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Handmayam Buddhassa Bhagavato Ubhaganam Karam Karomasi Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Handmayam Buddhanusatinayam Karomasi Tam Khopana Bhagavantang Evam Kalyano Kiti Satto Abhugato Itipiso Bhagava Arahan Samma Sambuddho Vidyacharana Sampanno Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sarati Sattha Deva Manussanam Buddho Bhagavati Handmayam Buddha Vigitim Karomasi Buddhavaranta Diguna Viyuto Yuddha Vijnana Karuna Isamagatato Dodesiyo Sujanatang Kamalang Vasuro Vandami Ham Tamarinam Sirsajinendam Buddhoyo Sabbhapaninam Saranam Kemam Uttamam Pathamanusatithana Vandami Tam Sirenam Buddhasasmi Dasova Buddho Me Sami Kisaro Buddhasam Niyadini Tariran Jivitanchidam Vandantoham Charisam Buddhaseva Subodhitam Nati Me Saranang Anyang Buddho Me Saranang Varang Etena Satchavajjena वड्डेयं सत्तु शासने बुद्धं मे वन्दमानेन यं पुण्यं प्रसुतं इदा सर्वेऽपि अन्तरायामि माहेशं तस्य तेजसा
Handmayam Dhammanusatinayam Karomasi Svakhato
Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditthiko Akaliko Ehi Passiko Panaiko Pachattang Veditabba Vinyohiti
Handmayam Dhamma Vigitim Karomasi Svakhatata
Tadi Guna Yoga Vase Seyo Yo Magapaka Pariya Tivimokha Vedo Dhammo Kuloka Patana Tadadhari Dhari Vandami Ham Tamarana Varadhamma Metam Dhammo Yo Sabbapanina Saranam Kema Uttamam Dutyanusatitthana Vandami Tam Sirenam Dhammasasmi Dasoha
Dhammo Me Sami Tisaro Dhammasam
Niyademi Sarira Jivitanchidam Vandantoham Charisami Dhammasaiva Sudhammatam Natti me saranang anya Dhammo me saranang varam Etena sajja vajjena Vaddeyam sattu sasani Dhammam me vandamanena Yam punyam pasutam hida Sabbepi antarayami Mahesum tasya tejasa Kayena vacha vajesa Dhamme gopangam bhaktamaya Dhammo patiganato cha Kalantare sambaritam dhamme
Handmayam Sanghanusatinayam Karomasi Supati
Panno bhagavato savaka sangho Ojupati panno bhagavato savaka sangho Nyaya patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Samichi patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Yadidang chattari purisa yugani atta purisa puggala Esu bhagavato savaka sangho Ahuneyo pahuneyo Dakhineyo anjali karaniyo Anuttarang punyakritam lokasati
Handmayam Sanghavigitim Karomasi Sadhamma
Jo supatipatti gunadiyuto Yo attavido ariya puggala Seto Siladi Dhamma Pavara Sayakaya Chitto Vandami Ham Tamari
Naganam Susudham
Sangoyo Sambhapaninam Saranam Khemamuttamam Natyanusatithanam Vandamitam Sirenaham Sangasasmi Daso Sango Me Sami Kissaro Sangasaham Niyademi Sariram Jeevitam Chedam Vandantoham Charissam Sangasya Patipannatam Natti Me Saranam Anyam Saranam Varam Etena Sajjavajjena Vaddeyam Sattu Sasane Sangham Me Vandamanena Yam Punyam Pasutam Ida Sabbepi Antarayami Mahesum Tassate Sa Haino Ajahn Sange Kukamam Paktamaya Sangho Patiganatha Chantam Kalantare Samaritam Sange अब चंद महा थेरा भोजंगा सुनेंगे आज
Arahatu Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Maha Cunda Thera Bojjhanga Parittang Evam Sutang Ekam Samayang Bhagava Rajagahe Viharati Veduvani Kalandakanivape Tena Kopana Samayena Bhagava Abadhiko Hoti Dukkito Balhagilano Athako Ayasma Mahachundo Sayantha Samayang Patisallana Uttito Yena Bhagavate Upasankamitva Bhagavantang Abhivaditva Ekamantang Nisidhi Ekamantang Nisingnang Ko Ayasmantang Mahachundang Bhagavai Tadavocha Patibhantu Tang Chunda Bojjhangati Sattini Bhamte Bojjhanga Bhagavata Sammadakkhata Bhavita Bahuli Kata Abhinyaya Sambodhaya Nibbānaya Samvattanti Katame Satka Sati Sambojjhango Ko Bhante Bhagavata Sammadakkhāto Bhavito Bahuli Kato Abhinyaya Sambodhaya Nibbānaya Samvattati Dhamma Vichaya Sambojjhango Ko Bhante Bhagavata sammadakkhatu bhavito bahulikato abhiññāya sambodhāya nibbānāya samvattati. Viriya sambojjhango ko bhante bhagavata sammadakkhatu bhavito bahulikato abhiññāya sambodhāya nibbānāya samvattati. Pīti sambojjhango ko bhante bhagavata sammadakkhatu bhavito bahulikato abhiññāya sambodhāya nibbānāya samvattati. Passaddhi sambojjhango ko bhante bhagavata sammadakkhatu bhavito bahulikato abhiññāya sambodhāya nibbānāya samvattati. Samadhi sambojjhango ko bhante bhagavata sammadakkhatu bhavito bahulikato abhiññāya sambodhāya nibbānāya samvattati. Upekkhā sambojjhango ko bhante bhagavata sammadakkhatu bhavito bahulikato abhiññāya sambodhāya nibbānāya samvattati. Ime ko bhante satta bojjhanga bhagavata sammadakkhata bhavita bahulikata abhiññāya sambodhāya nibbānāya samvattanti. Tagga Cunda Bojjhanga Tagga Cunda Bojjhangati. Idamo chayasma Maha Chundo samanunyo sattha hosi. Uddhahi cha bhagavatam padha tatha paheno cha bhagavato so abadho ahositi. Etena sacca vajjena suttite hotu sabbada. Etena sacca vajjena suttite hotu sabbada. Etena sacca vajjena suttite hotu sabbada. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Now listen to a discourse of Ajahn Chah. Called Unshakable Peace. It's quite long, so we'll listen to it in three parts probably.
8. Unshakable Peace.
Maybe in 4 parts, it's quite long.
Is to search for a way to transcend suffering and attain peace and happiness. Whether we study physical or mental phenomena, Chapter 38, Unshakable Peace. The whole reason for studying the Dhamma, the teachings of the Buddha, is to search for a way to transcend suffering and attain peace and happiness. Whether we study physical or mental phenomena, the mind, chitta, or its psychological factors, cetasika, it's only when we make liberation from suffering our ultimate goal that we're on the right path. Nothing less. Suffering has a cause and conditions for its existence. Please clearly understand that when the mind is still, it's in its natural, normal state. As soon as the mind moves, it becomes conditioned, sankhara. When the mind is attracted to something, it becomes conditioned. When aversion arises, it becomes conditioned. The desire to move here and there arises from conditioning. If our awareness doesn't keep pace with these mental proliferations as they occur, the mind will chase after them and be conditioned by them. Whenever the mind moves, at that moment, it becomes conventional reality. So the Buddha taught us to contemplate these wavering conditions of the mind. Whenever the mind moves, it becomes unstable and impermanent, anicca, unsatisfactory, dukkha, and cannot be taken as a self, anatta. These are the three universal characteristics of all conditioned phenomena. The Buddha taught us to observe and contemplate these movements of the mind. It's likewise with the teaching of dependent origination, paticca samuppada. Deluded understanding, avijja, is the cause and condition for the arising of volitional karmic formations, sankhara, which is the cause and condition for the arising of consciousness, vijnana, which is the cause and conditioning for the arising of mentality and materiality, nama and rupa, and so on, just as we studied in the scriptures. The Buddha separated each link of the chain to make it easier to study. This is an accurate description of reality, but when this process actually occurs in real life, the scholars aren't able to keep up with what's happening. It's like falling from the top of a tree and crashing down to the ground below. We've no idea how many branches we passed on the way down. Similarly, when the mind is suddenly hit by a mental impression, if it delights in it, then it flies off into a good mood. It considers it good without being aware of the chain of conditions that led there. The process takes place in accordance with what is outlined in the theory, but simultaneously it goes beyond the limits of that theory. There's nothing that announces, this is delusion, these are volitional formations, that's consciousness. The process doesn't give the scholars a chance to read out the list as it's happening. Although the Buddha analyzed and explained the sequence of mind moments in minute detail, to me, it's more like falling out of a tree. As we come crashing down, there's no opportunity to estimate how many feet and inches we've fallen. What we do know is that we've hit the ground with a thud, and it hurts. The mind is the same. When it falls for something, what we're aware of is the pain. Where has all this suffering, pain and grief and despair come from? It didn't come from the theory in a book. There isn't anywhere where the details of our suffering are written down. Our pain won't correspond exactly with the theory, but the two travel along the same road. So, scholarship alone can't keep pace with the reality. That's why the Buddha taught us to cultivate clear knowing for ourselves. Whatever arises, arises in this knowing. When that which knows, knows in accordance with the truth, then the mind and its psychological factors are recognized as not ours. Ultimately, all these phenomena are to be discarded and thrown away as if they were rubbish. We shouldn't cling to or give them any meaning. Theory and reality. The Buddha did not teach about the mind and its psychological factors so that we get attached to the concepts. His sole intention was that we would recognize them as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. Then let go. Lay them aside. Be aware and know them as they arise. This mind has already been conditioned. It's been trained and conditioned to turn away and spin out from a state of pure awareness. As it spins, it creates conditioned phenomena which further influence the mind, and the proliferation carries on. The process gives birth to the good, the evil, and everything else under the sun. The Buddha taught to abandon it all. Initially, however, you have to familiarize yourself with the theory in order that you'll be able to abandon it all at a later stage. This is a natural process. Mind is just this way. Psychological factors are just this way. Take the Noble Eightfold Path, for example. When wisdom, panya, views things correctly with insight, this right view then leads to right intention, right speech, right action, and so on. This all involves psychological conditions that have arisen from that pure knowing awareness. This knowing is like a lantern shedding light on the path ahead in the dark night. If the knowing is right, if it's in accordance with the truth, it will pervade and illuminate each of the other steps on the path in turn. Whatever we experience, it all arises from within this knowing. If this mind did not exist, the knowing would not exist either. All these are phenomena of the mind. As the Buddha said, the mind is merely the mind. It's not a being, a person, a self, or yourself. It's neither us nor them. The Dhamma is simply the Dhamma. It's a natural, selfless process. It does not belong to us or anyone else. It's not anything. Whatever an individual experiences, it all falls within the 5 fundamental categories, the khandhas: body, feeling, memory, perception, thoughts, and consciousness. The Buddha said to let it all go. Meditation is like a single stick of wood. Insight, vipassana, is one end of the stick, and serenity, samatha, the other. If we pick it up, does only one end come up, or do both? When anyone picks up a stick, both ends rise together. Which part then is vipassana? Which part is samatha? Where does one end and the other begin? They are both the mind. As the mind becomes peaceful, initially the peace will arise from the serenity of samatha. We focus and unify the mind in states of meditative peace, samadhi. However, if the peace and stillness of samadhi fades away, suffering arises in its place. Why is that? Because the peace afforded by samatha meditation alone is still based on attachment. This attachment can then be a cause of suffering. Serenity is not the end of the path. The Buddha saw from his own experience that such peace of mind was not the ultimate. The causes underlying the process of existence, Maha, had not yet been brought to cessation, Nirodha. The conditions for rebirth still existed. His spiritual work had not yet attained perfection. Why? Because there was still suffering. So, based on that serenity of samatha, he proceeded to contemplate, investigate, and analyze the conditioned nature of reality until he was free of all attachments, even the attachment to serenity. Serenity is still part of the world of conditioned existence and conventional reality. If the peace and stillness of samadhi fades away, suffering arises in its place. Why is that? Because the peace afforded by samatha meditation alone is still based on attachment. This attachment can then be a cause of suffering. Serenity is not the end of the path. The Buddha saw from his own experience that such peace of mind was not the ultimate. The causes underlying the process of existence, Maha, had not yet been brought to cessation, Nirodha. The conditions for rebirth still existed. His spiritual work had not yet attained perfection. Why? Because there was still suffering. So, based on that serenity of samatha, he proceeded to contemplate, investigate, and analyze the conditioned nature of reality until he was free of all attachments, even the attachment to serenity. Serenity is still part of the world of conditioned existence and conventional reality. Clinging to this type of peace is clinging to conventional reality. And as long as we cling, we will be mired in existence and rebirth. Delighting in the peace of samatha still leads to further existence and rebirth. Once the mind's restlessness and agitation calms down, one clings to the resultant peace. So the Buddha examined the causes and conditions underlying existence and rebirth. As long as he had not yet fully penetrated the matter and understood the truth, he continued to probe deeper and deeper with a peaceful mind, reflecting on how all things, peaceful or not, come into existence. His investigation forged ahead until it was clear to him that everything that comes into existence is like a lump of red-hot iron. The 5 categories of a being's experience, the khandhas, are all a lump of red-hot iron. When a lump of iron is glowing red-hot, is there anywhere that you can touch it without getting burnt? Is there anywhere at all that's cool? Try touching it on the top, the sides, or underneath. Is there a single spot that can be found that's cool? Impossible. This searing lump of iron is entirely red-hot. We can't even attach to serenity. If we identify with that peace, assuming that there is someone who is calm and serene, this reinforces the sense that there's an independent self or soul. This sense of self is part of conventional reality, thinking, I'm peaceful, I'm agitated, I'm good, or I'm bad, I'm happy, or I'm unhappy. We're caught in more existence and birth. It's more suffering. If our happiness vanishes, then we're unhappy instead. When our sorrow vanishes, then we're happy again. Caught in this endless cycle, we revolve repeatedly through heaven and hell. Before his enlightenment, the Buddha recognized this pattern in his own heart. He knew that the conditions for existence and rebirth had not yet ceased. His work was not yet finished. Focusing on life's conditionality, he contemplated in accordance with nature, thinking, due to this cause, there is birth. Due to birth, there is death. And all this movement of coming and going. So the Buddha took up these themes for contemplation in order to understand the truth about the 5 khandhas. Everything mental and physical, everything conceived and thought about, without exception, is conditioned. Once he knew this, he taught us to set it down. Once he knew this, he taught to abandon it all. He encouraged others to understand in accordance with this truth. If we don't, we'll suffer. We won't be able to let go of these things. However, once we do see the truth of the matter, we'll recognize how these things delude us. As the Buddha taught, the mind has no substance. It's not anything. The mind isn't born belonging to anyone. It doesn't die as anyone's. This mind is free, brilliantly radiant, and unentangled with any problems or issues. The reason problems arise is because the mind is deluded by conditioned things, deluded by this misperception of self. So the Buddha taught to observe this mind. In the beginning, what is there? There is truly nothing there. It doesn't arise with conditioned things, and it doesn't die with them. When the mind encounters something good, it doesn't change to become good. When the mind encounters something bad, it doesn't become bad as well. That's how it is when there is clear insight into one's nature. There is understanding that this is essentially a substanceless state of affairs. The Buddha's insight saw it all as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. He wants us to fully comprehend in the same way. The knowing then knows in accordance with the truth. When it knows happiness or sorrow, it remains unmoved. The emotion of happiness is a form of birth. The tendency to become sad is a form of death. When there's death, there is birth, and what's born has to die. That which arises and passes away is caught in this remitting cycle. That which arises and passes away is caught in this unremitting cycle of becoming. Once the meditator's mind comes to this state of understanding, no doubt remains about whether there's further becoming and rebirth. There's no need to ask anyone else. The Buddha comprehensively investigated conditioned phenomena and so was able to let it all go. The 5 khandhas were let go of, and the knowing carried on, merely as an impartial observer of the process. If he experienced something positive, he didn't become positive along with it. He simply observed and remained aware. If he experienced something negative, he didn't become negative. And why was that? Because his mind had been cut free from such causes and conditions. He'd penetrated the truth. The conditions leading to rebirth no longer existed. This is the knowing that is certain and reliable. This is a mind that is truly at peace. This is what is not born, doesn't age, doesn't get sick, and doesn't die. This is neither cause nor effect, nor dependent on cause and effect. It's independent of the process of causal conditioning. The causes then cease with no conditioning remaining. This mind is above and beyond birth and death, above and beyond happiness and sorrow, above and beyond both good and evil. What can you say? It's beyond the limitations of language to describe it. All supporting conditions have ceased, and any attempt to describe it will merely lead to attachment. The words used then become the theory of the mind. Theoretical descriptions of the mind and its workings are accurate, but the Buddha realized that this type of knowledge was relatively useless. We understand something intellectually and then we believe it, but it's of no real benefit. It doesn't lead to peace of mind. The knowing of the Buddha leads to letting go. It results in abandoning and renunciation because it's precisely this mind that leads us to get involved with both what's right and what's wrong. If we're smart, we get involved with those things that are right. If we're stupid, we get involved with those things that are wrong. Such a mind is the world, and the Blessed One took the things of this world to examine this very world. Having come to know the world as it actually was, he was then known as the one who clearly comprehends the world. Concerning this issue of samatha and vipassana, the important thing is to develop these states in our own hearts. Only when we genuinely cultivate them ourselves will we know what they actually are. We can go and study what all the books say about psychological factors of the mind, but that kind of intellectual understanding is useless for actually cutting off selfish desire, anger, and delusion. We only study the theory about selfish desire, anger, and delusion, merely describing the various characteristics of these mental defilements. Selfish desire has this meaning, anger means that. Delusion is defined like this. Only knowing their theoretical qualities, we can talk about them only at that level. We know and we are intelligent, but when these defilements actually appear in our minds, do they correspond with the theory or not? When, for example, we experience something undesirable, do we react and get into a bad mood? Do we attach? Can we let it go? If aversion comes up and we recognize it, do we still hang on to it? Once we've seen it, do we let it go? If we find that we see something that we don't like and retain that aversion in our hearts, we better go back and start studying again. It's still not right. The practice is not yet perfect. When it reaches perfection, letting go happens. Look at it in this light. We truly have to look deeply into our own hearts if we want to experience the fruits of this practice. Attempting to describe the psychology of the mind in terms of the numerous separate moments of consciousness and their different characteristics is, in my opinion, not taking the practice far enough. There's still a lot more to it. If we're going to study these things, then we need to know them absolutely, with clarity and penetrative understanding. Without clarity of insight, how will we ever be finished with them? There's no end to it. We'll never complete our studies. Practicing Dhamma is thus extremely important. When I practiced, that's how I studied. I didn't know anything about mind moments or psychological factors. I just observed the quality of knowing. If a thought of hate arose, I asked myself why. If a thought of love arose, I asked myself why. This is the way. Whether it's labeled as a thought or called a psychological factor, so what? Just penetrate this one point until you're able to resolve these feelings of love and hate, until they completely vanish from the heart. When I was able to stop loving and hating under any circumstance, I was able to transcend suffering. Then it doesn't matter what happens next. The heart and mind are released and at ease. Nothing remains. It's all stopped. Practice like this. If people want to talk a lot about theory, that's their business. But no matter how much it's debated, the practice always comes down to this single point right here. When something arises, it arises right here. Whether a lot or a little, it originates right here. When it ceases, the cessation is right here. Where else? The Buddha called this point the knowing. When it knows the way things are accurately, in line with the truth, will understand the meaning of mind. Things incessantly deceive. As you study them, they're simultaneously deceiving you. How else can I put it? Even though you know about them, you're still being deluded by them, precisely where you know them. That's the situation. The issue is this. It's my opinion that the Buddha didn't intend that we only know what these things are called. The aim of the Buddha's teachings is to figure out the way to liberate ourselves from these things through searching for the underlying causes. Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. I practiced Dhamma without knowing a great deal. I just knew that the path to liberation began with virtue, Sila. Virtue is the beautiful beginning of the path. The deep peace of Samadhi is the beautiful middle. Wisdom, Panya, is the beautiful end. Although they can be separated as three unique aspects of the training, as we look into them more and more deeply, these three qualities converge as one. To uphold virtue, you have to be wise. We actually advise people to develop ethical standards first by keeping the 5 precepts so that their virtue will become solid. However, the perfection of virtue takes a lot of wisdom. We have to consider our speech and actions and analyze their consequences. This is all the work of wisdom. We have to rely on our wisdom in order to cultivate virtue. According to the theory, virtue comes first, then samadhi, and then wisdom. But when I examined it, I found that wisdom is the foundation stone for every other aspect of the practice. In order to fully comprehend the consequences of what we say and do, especially the harmful consequences, we need to use wisdom to guide and supervise, to scrutinize the workings of cause and effect. This will purify our actions and speech. Once we become familiar with ethical and unethical behavior, we see the place to practice. We then abandon what's bad and cultivate what's good. We abandon what's wrong and cultivate what's right. This is virtue. As we do this, the heart becomes increasingly firm and steadfast. A steadfast and unwavering heart is free of apprehension, remorse, and confusion concerning our actions and speech. This is samadhi. This stable unification of mind forms a secondary and more powerful source of energy in our Dhamma practice, allowing a deeper contemplation of the sights, sounds, etc. that we experience. Once the mind is established with firm and unwavering mindfulness and peace, we can engage in sustained inquiry into the reality of the body, feeling, perception, thought, consciousness, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, bodily sensations, and objects of mind. As they continually arise, we continually investigate with a sincere determination not to lose our mindfulness. Then we'll know what these things actually are. They come into existence following their own natural truth. As our understanding steadily grows, wisdom is born. Once there's clear comprehension of the way things truly are, our old perceptions are uprooted and our conceptual knowledge transforms into wisdom. That's how virtue, samadhi, and wisdom merge and function as one. As wisdom increases in strength and then intrepidity, samadhi evolves to become increasingly firm. The more unshakable samadhi is, the more unshakable and all-encompassing virtue becomes. As virtue is perfected, it nurtures samadhi, and the additional strengthening of samadhi leads to a maturing of wisdom. These three aspects of the training mesh and intertwine. United, they form the Noble Eightfold Path, the way of the Buddha. Once virtue, samadhi, and wisdom reach their peak, this path has the power to eradicate those things which defile the kilesa, which defile the mind's purity. When sensual desire comes up, when anger and delusion show their face, this path is the only thing capable of cutting them down in their tracks. The framework for Dhamma practice is the Four Noble Truths: suffering, dukkha, the origin of suffering, samudaya, the cessation of suffering, nirodha, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering, magga. This path consists of virtue, samadhi, and wisdom, the framework for training the heart. Their meaning is not to be found in these words, but dwells in the depths of our hearts. That's what virtue, samadhi, and wisdom are like. They revolve continually. The Noble Eightfold Path will envelop any sight, sound, smell, taste, bodily sensation, or object of mind that arises. However, if the factors of the Eightfold Path are weak and timid, the defilements will possess our minds. If the Noble Path is strong and courageous, it will conquer and destroy the defilements. If the defilements are powerful and brave, while the path is feeble and frail, the defilements will conquer the path. They conquer our hearts. If the knowing isn't quick and nimble enough as forms, feelings, perceptions, and thoughts are experienced, they possess us and devastate us. The path and the defilements proceed in tandem. As Dhamma practice develops in the heart, these two forces have to battle it out every step of the way. It's as though there are two people arguing inside the mind, but it's just the path of Dhamma and the defilements struggling to win dominance. struggling to win domination of the heart. The path guides and fosters our ability to contemplate. As long as we're able to contemplate accurately, the defilements will be losing ground. But if we're shaky, whenever defilements regroup and regain their strength, the path will be routed as defilements take its place. The two sides will continue to fight it out until eventually there's a victor and the whole affair is settled. If we focus our endeavor on developing the way of Dhamma, defilements will be gradually and persistently eradicated. Once fully cultivated, the Four Noble Truths reside in our hearts. Whatever form suffering takes, it always exists due to a cause. That's the second Noble Truth. And what's the cause? Weak virtue, weak samadhi, weak wisdom. When the path isn't durable, the defilements dominate the mind. When they dominate, the second Noble Truth comes into play, and it gives rise to all sorts of suffering. Once we're suffering, those qualities which are able to quell the suffering disappear. The conditions which give rise to the path of virtue, samadhi, and wisdom, when they've attained full strength, the path of Dhamma is unstoppable, advancing unceasingly to overcome the attachment and clinging that bring us so much anguish. Suffering can't arise because the path is destroying the defilements. It's at this point that the cessation of suffering occurs. Why is the path able to bring about the cessation of suffering? Because virtue, samadhi, and wisdom are attaining their peak of perfection, and the path has gathered an unstoppable momentum. It all comes together right here. I would say for anyone who practices like this, theoretical ideas about the mind don't come into the picture. If the mind is liberated from these, then it's utterly dependable and certain. Now, whatever path it takes, we don't have to goad it much and to keep it going straight. Consider the leaves of a mango tree. What are they like? By examining just a single leaf, we know. Even if there are 10,000 of them, we know what all those leaves are like. Just look at one leaf. The others are essentially the same. Similarly with the trunk. We only have to see the trunk of one mango tree to know the characteristics of them all. Just look at one tree. All the other mango trees will be essentially no different. Even if there are 100,000 of them, if I knew one, I'd know them all. This is what the Buddha taught. Virtue, samadhi, and wisdom constitute the path of the Buddha. But the way is not the essence of the Dhamma. The path isn't an end in itself, not the ultimate aim of the Blessed One, but it's the way leading inwards. It's just like how you traveled from Bangkok to my monastery, Wat Nong Pah Pong. It's not the road you were after. What you wanted to reach was the monastery, but you needed the road for the journey. The road you traveled on is not the monastery. It's just the way to get here. If you want to arrive at the monastery, you have to follow the road. It's the same with virtue, samadhi, and wisdom. We could say that they're not the essence of the Dhamma, but they are the road to arrive there. When virtue, samadhi, and wisdom have been mastered, the result is profound peace of mind. That's the destination. Once we have arrived at this peace, even if we hear a noise, the mind remains unruffled. Once we've reached this peace, there's nothing remaining to do. The Buddha taught to give it all up. Whatever happens, there's nothing to worry about. Then we truly, unquestionably know for ourselves. We no longer simply believe what other people say. The essential principle of Buddhism is empty of any phenomena. It's not contingent upon miraculous displays of psychic powers, paranormal abilities, or anything else mystical or bizarre. The Buddha did not emphasize the importance of these things. Such powers, however, do exist and may be possible to develop, but this facet of Dhamma is deluding, so the Buddha did not advocate or encourage it. The only people he praised were the ones who were able to liberate themselves from suffering. To accomplish this requires training, and the tools and equipment to get the job done are generosity, virtue, samadhi, and wisdom. We have to take them up and train with them. Together they form a path inclining inwards, and wisdom is the first step. This path cannot mature if the mind is encrusted with defilements, but if we are stout-hearted and strong, the path will eliminate these impurities. However, if it's the defilements that are stout-hearted and strong, they will destroy the path. Dhamma practice simply involves these two forces battling it out incessantly until the end of the road is reached. They engage in unremitting battle until the very end. The dangers of attachment. Using the tools of practice entails hardship and arduous challenges. We rely on patience, endurance, and going without. We have to do it ourselves, experience it for ourselves, realize it ourselves. Scholars, however, tend to get confused a lot. For example, when they sit in meditation, as soon as their minds experience a teeny bit of tranquility, they start to think, hey, this must be first jhana. This is how their minds work. And once those thoughts arise, the tranquility they'd experienced is shattered. Soon they start to think it must have been the second jhana they'd attained. Don't think and speculate about it. There aren't any billboards which announce which kind of level of samadhi you're experiencing. The reality is completely different. There aren't any signs like the road signs that tell you, this is the way to Wapapong. That's not how I read the mind. It doesn't announce. Although a number of highly esteemed scholars have written descriptions of the first, second, third, fourth jhana, what's written is merely external information. If the mind actually enters these states of profound peace, it doesn't know anything about those written descriptions. It knows, but what it knows isn't the same as the theory we study. If the scholars try to clutch their theory and drag it around into their meditation, sitting and pondering, what could this be? Is this first jhana yet? There. The peace is shattered, and they don't experience anything of real value. And why is that? Because there is desire. And once there's craving, what happens? The mind simultaneously withdraws out of the meditation. So it's necessary for all of us to relinquish thinking and speculation. Abandon them completely. Just take up the body, speech, and mind and delve entirely into the practice. Observe the workings of the mind, but don't lug the Dhamma books in there with you. Otherwise, everything becomes a big mess, because nothing in those books corresponds precisely to the reality of the way things truly are. People who study a lot, who are full of theoretical knowledge, usually don't succeed in Dhamma practice. They get bogged down at the information level. The truth is, the heart and mind can't be measured by external standards. If the mind is getting peaceful, just allow it to be peaceful. The most profound levels of peace do exist. Personally, I didn't know much about the theory of practice. I'd been a monk for 3 years and still had a lot of questions about what samadhi actually was. I kept trying to think about it and figure it out as I meditated, but my mind became even more restless and distracted than it had been before. The amount of thinking actually increased. When I wasn't meditating, it was more peaceful. Boy, was it difficult, so exasperating. But even though I encountered so many obstacles, I never threw in a towel. I just kept on doing it. When I wasn't trying to do anything in particular, my mind was relatively at ease. But whenever I determined to make the mind unify in samadhi, it went out of control. What's going on here, I wondered. Why is this happening? Later on, I began to realize that meditation was comparable to the process of breathing. If we're determined to force the breath, to be shallow, deep, or just right, it's very difficult to do. However, if we go for a stroll and we're not even aware of when we're breathing in or out, it's extremely relaxing. So I reflected, maybe that's the way it works. When a person is normally walking around in the course of the day, not focusing attention on their breath, does their breathing cause them suffering? No, they just feel relaxed. But when I sit down and vow with determination that I was going to make my mind peaceful, clinging and attachment all set in. When I tried to control the breath to be shallow or deep, it just brought on more stress than I had before. Why? Because the willpower I was using was tainted with clinging and attachment. I didn't know what was going on. All that frustration and hardship was coming up because I was bringing craving into the meditation. Unshakable peace. I once stayed in a forest monastery that was half a mile from a village. One night the villagers were celebrating with a loud party as I was doing walking meditation. It must have been after 11 o'clock and I was feeling a bit peculiar. I've been feeling strange like this since midday. My mind was quiet. There were hardly any thoughts. I felt very relaxed and at ease. I did walking meditation until I was tired, then I went to sit in my grass roof hut. As I sat down, I barely had time to cross my legs before, amazingly, my mind just wanted to delve into a profound state of peace. It happened all by itself. As soon as I sat down, the mind became truly peaceful. It was rock solid. It wasn't as if I could hear the noise of the villagers singing and dancing. It wasn't as if I couldn't hear the noise of the villagers singing and dancing. I still could, but I could also shut out the sound entirely. Strange. When I didn't pay attention to the sound, it was perfectly quiet. Didn't hear a thing. But if I wanted to hear, I could, without it being a disturbance. It was like there were two objects in my mind that were placed side by side, but not touching. I could see that the mind and its object of awareness were separate and distinct, just like the spittoon and water kettle here. Then I understood. When the mind unifies in Samadhi, if you direct your attention outward, you can hear. But if you let it dwell in its emptiness, then it's perfectly silent. When sound was perceived, I could see that the knowing and the sound were distinctly different. I contemplated, if this isn't the way it is, how else could it be? That's the way it was. These two things were totally separate. I continued investigating like this until my understanding deepened even further. This is important. When the perceived continuity of phenomena is cut, the result is peace. The previous illusion of continuity, santati, transformed into peace of mind, santi. So I continued to sit, putting forth effort into the meditation. The mind at that time was focused solely on the meditation, indifferent to everything else. Had I stopped meditating at this point, it would have been merely because it was complete. I could have taken it easy, but it wouldn't have been because of laziness, tiredness, or feeling annoyed. Not at all. These were absent from the heart. There was only perfect inner balance and equipoise, just right. Eventually I did take a break, but it was only the posture of sitting that changed. My heart remained constant, unwavering and unflagging. I pulled a pillow over, intending to take a rest. As I reclined, the mind remained just as peaceful as it had been before. Then, just before my head hit the pillow, the mind's awareness began to flow inwards. I didn't know where it was headed, but it kept flowing deeper and deeper within. It was like a current of electricity flowing down a cable to a switch. When it hit the switch, my body exploded with a deafening bang. The knowing during that time was extremely lucid and subtle. Once past that point, the mind was released to penetrate deeply inside. It went inside to the point where there wasn't anything at all. Absolutely nothing from the outside world could come into that place. Nothing at all could reach it. Having dwelt internally for some time, the mind then retreated to flow back out. However, when I say it retreated, I don't mean to imply that I made it flow back out. I was simply an observer, only knowing and witnessing. The mind came out more and more until finally it returned to normal. Once my normal state of consciousness returned, the question arose, what was that? The answer came immediately. These things happen of their own accord. You don't have to search for an explanation. This answer was enough to satisfy my mind. After a short time, my mind again began to flow inwards. I wasn't making any conscious effort to direct the mind. It took off by itself. As it moved deeper and deeper inside, it again hit that same switch. This time my body shattered into the most minute particles and fragments. Again, the mind was released to penetrate deeply inside itself. Utter silence. It was even more profound than the first time. Absolutely nothing external could reach it. The mind abided here for some time, as long as it wished, and then retreated to flow outwards. At that time, it was following its own momentum and happening all by itself. I wasn't influencing or directing my mind to be any particular way, to flow inwards or retreat outwards. I was merely the one knowing and watching. My mind again returned to its normal state of consciousness, and I didn't wonder or speculate about what was happening. As I meditated, the mind once again inclined inwards. This time, the entire cosmos shattered and disintegrated into minute particles. The earth, ground, mountains, fields and forests, the whole world, disintegrated into the space element. People had vanished. Everything had disappeared. On this third time, absolutely nothing remained. The mind, having inclined inwards, settled down there for as long as it wished to. I can't say I understand exactly how it remained there. It's difficult to describe what happened. There's nothing I can compare it to. No simile is apt. This time the mind remained inside far longer than it had previously, and only after some time did it come out of that state. When I say it came out, I don't mean to imply that I made it come out, or that I was controlling what was happening. The mind did it all by itself. I was merely an observer. Eventually, it again returned to its normal state of consciousness. How can you put a name on what happened during these 3 times? Who knows? What term are you going to use to label it? The power of Samadhi. Everything I've been relating to you concerns them.
इस आज के प्रवचन का हिंदी अनुवाद करते हैं संक्षेप में। इस देशना जो काफी लंबी है, उसका टाइटल है अनशेकेबल पीस, ऐसी शांति जो कभी हिल ना सके। तो आजान ने शुरू किया प्रवचन इस बता के कि मन जो है अपना उसका नेचुरल स्टेट तो बहुत पीसफुल है, जानने की उसकी क्षमता है बस, लेकिन जब वो हिलता है बाहर के सेंसरी इम्पिंजमेंट के कारण, तो फिर संस्कार बनते हैं, वो कंडीशन माइंड बन जाता है और फिर वो कन्वेंशनल रियलिटीज में उलझ जाता है। फिर भी वो रहता तो इम्पर्सनल ही है, अनत्य ही है। मन कोई हमारी अपनी पर्सनल चीज नहीं है, प्रकृति का भाग है। तो उन्होंने बताया कोई प्रतिचय समुत्पाद के अनुसार भी समझाने का शुरू के कुछ लिंक बताया कि जैसे विद्या से संस्कार बनते हैं, ज्ञान बनते हैं, फिर नाम रूप, और फिर इसी तरह से। तो इस तरह से उन्होंने बताया कि एक अच्छा डिस्क्रिप्शन है रियलिटी का, लेकिन हर एक लिंक को देख पाना बड़ा मुश्किल होता है। क्यों? उन्होंने कहा कि जो उनके अनुभव से तो ऐसा ही है जैसे कि कोई आदमी पेड़ के ऊपर से बैठा है और गिर जाए नीचे, तो वो नीचे आते हुए कितनी कितनी शाखाएं आई थी, कौन सी स्टेज थी, वो नहीं देख पाता, और नीचे धड़ाम से गिरता है और उसको लगती है। तो इसी तरह मन की भी स्थिति है, जैसे ही अविद्या का असर ज्यादा होता है तो दुख इमीडिएटली हो जाता है, बीच की स्टेट देख पाना थोड़ा मुश्किल हो जाता है। तो बेसिकली वो ये कह रहे थे कि जो सिर्फ अगर स्कॉलरशिप है, आपको पूरी प्रत्यक्ष समुत्पाद की थ्योरी मालूम है, प्रैक्टिस नहीं की है, तो फिर कुछ उसका लाभ नहीं होगा। मुख्य बात केवल थ्योरी जो है उसका भी पर्पस यही है कि हम जो भी अनुभव है उसके अनित्य बोध, दुख बोध, अनात्म बोध को समझे और फिर त्याग दें, उनके प्रति जो हमारा उपादान है उसको त्याग दें। जो विकार है उनके कारण मन जो है भटकता रहता है, और इसलिए उनको त्याग करना ये बेसिकली साधना का मुख्य उद्देश्य है। उन्होंने चर्चा की अभी धम्म की, जिसमें एक माइंड मूवमेंट की बात होती है, एक माइंड मूवमेंट में इतने ये इस तरह के संस्कार जागते हैं, फिर इसमें ऐसा होता है। तो वो कहने लगी कि वो बात ठीक होगी, लेकिन उससे सिर्फ हमारी साधना जो है उससे जब तक साधना नहीं करेंगे तब तक उस बात का कोई फायदा नहीं होगा, उस समझ का कोई फायदा नहीं होगा। फिर 8 फोल्ड पाथ की बात की, उदाहरण के तौर पे कि जैसे 8 अष्टांगिक मार्ग है, तो उसका भी उद्देश्य ये कि वो हमारे को मुक्ति की ओर ले जाए, दुख मुक्ति की ओर, और प्रज्ञा ही सबसे महत्वपूर्ण बात है, क्योंकि अगर हम ठीक से देख पाएंगे तो सारे हमारे बाकी 7 अंग भी स्पष्ट हो जाएंगे। चर्चा की 5 खंड के बारे में कि वो भी जो है सेल्फलेस है, वो हमारे किसी के पर्सनल नहीं है, वो प्रकृति का भाग है और उसको हमको सबके प्रति उपादान छोड़ देना चाहिए। फिर बात हुई विपश्यना और समता की जो बार बार होती रहती है। उन्होंने कहा कि वो एक लकड़ी जैसे डंडी हो, उसके 2 हिस्से हैं, एक विपश्यना एक समता। डंडी उठाएंगे तो दोनों ही उठे साथ उठेंगे, ऐसा नहीं होता कि एक ही सामना उठे। तो जो समत है वो शांति के लिए, चित्त को शांत करने के लिए, लेकिन वो मार्ग का अंत नहीं है। जो शांति आती है वो कंडीशन शांति है, अल्टीमेट नहीं। और जो हमारे भव संस्कार है वो भी चले जा रहे हैं, तो इसलिए केवल समाधि के अभ्यास से मुक्ति नहीं मिल सकती, क्योंकि जो भव के पुनर्जन्म के संखार हैं वो अभी भी वहीं पे उपलब्ध हैं। सब समर्थ भाव का, समाधि का मुख्य भाव उद्देश्य ये है कि हम मन शांत हो जाए तो हम कंडीशन जो रियलिटी है उसको ठीक से देख पाएंगे, क्योंकि मन शांत मन से ही वो देख पाना संभव होता है। 5 खंड को उन्होंने उपमा दी कि एक गरम लोहे की बॉल जैसे हैं, उसको आप कहीं भी छुएंगे तो वो गरम भी लगेगा, वो कहीं ठंडा नहीं होगा। तो जो समाधि का सुख है वो भी उसी गरम लोहे की बॉल की तरह ही है, उसको हमको चिपकना नहीं चाहिए। क्योंकि हम अगर समाधि का अभ्यास करते हैं तो प्राय यही लगता है कि मैं शांत हो रहा हूँ, मेरी समाधि हो रही है, वो मैं का भाव ही भव का कारण बनता जाता है और फिर स्वर्ग और नर्क के चक्कर चलते रहते हैं। हमारा जो उद्देश्य होना चाहिए साधना का, कि जीवन की जो कंडीशनलिटी है, किस कारण से जन्म होता है, किस कारण से मृत्यु होती है, उन सबको समझने की कोशिश करें ताकि उससे मुक्ति पा सके। फिर एक बार फिर वही बात आई कि मन का कोई सब्सटेंस नहीं है, वो शुद्ध चित्त जो है वो भवस्वर चित्त जैसे बताया जाता है, और वो अनित्य नहीं है, वो हमेशा अनमूड है, अनकंडीशनड है। लेकिन जब चित्त में कुछ चीजें जुड़ जाती हैं, वो अच्छाई भी जुड़ जाए तो वो चित्त जो है अपना स्वभाव तो रखता है, लेकिन अच्छाई जो है वो मन के चैतसिक के रूप में आ जाती है। बुराई भी है, वो मन के चैतसिक के रूप में आती है, लेकिन चित्त शुद्ध चित्त का अपना स्वभाव ऐसा ही रहता है। जैसे एक और प्रवचन में उन्होंने अजान ने बताया था कि पानी पानी ही रहता है, उसमें कोई भी रंग मिला दे। अगर हम 5 खंडों के प्रति उपादान छोड़ दें तो सचमुच में हमारी जो जानने की क्षमता है जो मन की, वो एक स्पष्ट हो जाती है और एक इम्पर्सनल प्रोसेस की तरह चलती है और सत्य को ठीक से देख पाती है, उसका प्रतिवेदन कर पाती है, और जो पुनर्जन्म के सारे कारण है वो समाप्त हो जाते हैं। और जो इस तरह का जो ये शुद्ध चित्त है वो कोई कंडीशन अराइजिंग नहीं है, उसकी इंडिपेंडेंट है, मृत्यु और जन्म से परे है, सुख और दुख से परे है। फिर उन्होंने थ्योरेटिकल स्टडीज के बारे में, उनके लिमिटेशंस के बारे में बताया कि जो संसार में ठीक से उसको समझते नहीं है, तो अगर समझदार लोग हैं तो वो अच्छा काम करते हैं, लेकिन अच्छे काम करने में भी मैं का भाव चलता है, और समझदार नहीं है तो बुरा काम करते हैं, उसमें मैं का भाव रहता है, तो वो मुक्त नहीं हो पाते, स्वर्ग और नर्क के चक्कर में घूमते रहते हैं। मुख्य बात हमको जांचते रहना चाहिए कि कोई अगर अप्रिय परिस्थिति आती है तो क्या हम द्वेष जगाते हैं, प्रिय परिस्थिति आती है तो क्या हम राग जगाते हैं। इस तरह से इन्वेस्टिगेट करना साधना का मुख्य भाग है। केवल थ्योरेटिकल डिस्क्रिप्शन से लाभ नहीं होगा। बताने लगे अपनी साधना के बारे में कि अगर मेरे मन में द्वेष जागता था, नफरत जागती तो मैं पूछता था क्यों, और उसको पूरा समझने की कोशिश करता था। तेरा लोभ जागता था तो कैसे जागा, कहाँ से उसका उदय हुआ, और इस तरह से करते करते इन्वेस्टिगेट करते करते ऐसी स्थिति आई जब मैं उनको पूरी तरह छोड़ पाया और राग द्वेष समाप्त हो गए। वही बात मुख्य है कि हमें जो कंडीशनैलिटी है उसका अंडरलाइंग कॉजेज हैं जिसके मन के मैला होने के, वो उनको ठीक से समझना चाहिए। फिर शील समाधि बात की, प्रज्ञा की बात की सामान्यतः हम कहते हैं कि पहले शील का पालन करो, फिर समाधि का अभ्यास करो, प्रज्ञा का अभ्यास करो। अजान कहने लगे मेरे अपना अनुभव तो ऐसा है कि प्रज्ञा स्पष्ट हो जाए तो फिर शील अपने आप पुष्ट हो जाते हैं, समाधि अपने आप सुधर जाती है। हाँ, वो सब आपस में एक दूसरे को सपोर्ट करते हैं, क्योंकि अगर प्रज्ञा होगी तो गलत काम करने का मन ही नहीं जागेगा, समाधि शील अपने आप पुष्ट होंगे, और शील पुष्ट होंगे तो मन में कोई क्षोभ नहीं होगा, प्रसन्नता होगी तो समाधि का अभ्यास ठीक से हो पाएगा। तो इस तरह वो सब एक दूसरे को मदद करते हैं, शील समाधि प्रज्ञा, और यही आर्य अष्टांगिक मार्ग है। तो इसलिए आर्य अष्टांगिक मार्ग भी इसी तरह से काम करता है, एक दूसरे के ऊपर एक स्पाइरल की तरह सपोर्ट करते हैं। उन्होंने कहा कि साधना का जो फ्रेमवर्क है वो तो 4 आर्य सत्य का ही है। दुख सत्य है, दुख समुदय सत्य है, निरोध सत्य है और मग्ग सत्य है। और अगर 8 अष्टांगिक मार्ग जो मग्ग है उसमें से अगर कोई भी एक फैक्टर वीक हो जाए तो डिफाइलमेंट जो है हमारे को ओवर पावर कर लेती है। सबसे महत्वपूर्ण बात है कि अगर हमारी जानकारी सभी ज़्यादा सजग नहीं है तो फिर हमको डिफाइलमेंट्स जीत लेंगे, और सारी साधना जो है वो धम्म और विकारों के बीच का एक तरह का स्ट्रगल चलता रहता है। तो इसलिए 4 आर्य सत्यों को हमको आत्मसात करना चाहिए। जब हमारा नार्य अष्टांगिक मार्ग में हमने खूब पुष्ट किया है तो सफरिंग आएगी नहीं, और अगर वो वीक है कोई भी लिंक उसका तो दुख हमको घेर लेता है। और आर्य अष्टांगिक मार्ग के बारे में उन्होंने कहा कि वो भी एक केवल कारण मार्ग है, वो अंत नहीं है हमारे साधना का कि हम वही करते रहेंगे। हमारा साधना का उद्देश्य ये है कि हम अनशेकेबल पीस जो है, जो चेतो विमुक्ति है, उसका जो शांति है उसका अनुभव कर पाए। तो जैसे उदाहरण दिया कि अगर आप बैंकॉक से मेरे मोनेस्ट्री आना चाहते हैं वाट पापोंग, तो एक सड़क पे आएंगे, सड़क पे चलेंगे, लेकिन सड़क वाट पापोंग नहीं है, सड़क वहां पहुंचने का रास्ता है। और जब सचमुच में हम मार्ग को पूरा करते हैं तो ऐसी शांति, ऐसी का अनुभव होता है जो कभी भी परिस्थितियों से हिलती नहीं है, कंपायमान नहीं होती। तो हमें सच अपने आप मालूम पड़ जाता है कि हमारी साधना ठीक हो रही है। और भगवान की शिक्षा का ये मुख्य भाग यही है। कई बार लोग जो शक्तियां हैं, ऑकल्ट फिनोमेना है, साइकिक पावर्स हैं, उनमें फंस जाते हैं। भगवान ने हमेशा उनको डिस्करेज किया कि उस कार्य की चर्चा नहीं करती। साधना करने से कईयों की डेवलप हो जाती है, लेकिन वो साधना का उद्देश्य नहीं है। भूलना याद रखना चाहिए कि प्रज्ञा ही साधना का उद्देश्य है, और सारी जो हमारा मार्ग है वो प्रज्ञा और विकारों में एक बैटल चलती रहेगी। प्रज्ञा हावी हो जाएगी तो साधना चलेगी, विकार हावी हो जाएंगे तो साधना रुक जाएगी। और ये जो समाधि का अभ्यास करने वाले हैं उनकी दिक्कत ये होती है कि खासतौर पे जो बहुत समाधि के बारे में जानते हैं, पहला ज्ञान दूसरा ज्ञान, वो समाधि का अभ्यास करने लगते हैं, थोड़ी भी शांति आती है तो उनको लगता है वो पहला ज्ञान लग गया। जैसे ही वैसा विचार करते हैं वो सारी शांति समाप्त खत्म हो जाती है। फिर उनको लगा नहीं पहला नहीं था दूसरा ध्यान था, तो वो उस चक्कर में पड़े रहते हैं। तो इसलिए उस तरह के वो का उस तरह की अंडरस्टैंडिंग का कोई लाभ नहीं होता। हमारा मुख्य उद्देश्य है कि हम अपने मन के काम को समझें, मन कैसे काम करता है, चित्त कैसे काम करता है। तो उन्होंने बताया कि जब मैंने साधना शुरू की तो कोई ज़्यादा थ्योरेटिकल नॉलेज नहीं थी, और मैं सिर्फ यही, मैं शुरू के कई साल तो मैं साधना करता था तो मुझे मेरा मन बेचैन हो जाता था, साधना नहीं करता था तो ठीक रहता था। मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा था कि क्या हो रहा है। अंत में जब वॉकिंग करता था तो दिखता था कि वॉकिंग करते हुए तो ब्रेथ को देखने में कोई दिक्कत नहीं होती, जब मैं बैठता हूँ तो सांस को देखने में क्यों दिक्कत होती है। तो उन्हें समझ आया कि वो मैं मेरे मन में एक एक्सपेक्टेशन है, आशा बनी हुई है कि सांस को मैं लगातार देखूंगा, ऐसे होगा वैसे होगा, इस कारण से मन तनाव में आ जाता है और साधना ठीक से नहीं हो पाती। तो अपने इन्वेस्टिगेट करके ही मालूम पड़ा और फिर धीरे धीरे साधना ठीक होने लगी कि साधना में करते हुए अगर क्रेविंग है कुछ अटेन करने की तो साधना ठीक से नहीं हो पाती। फिर वो अपना अनुभव बताने लगे कि कैसे उनको ये अनुभव हुआ जबकि चित्त एकदम अनशेकेबल पीस का अनुभव, जिसे कहा उन्होंने कि मैं वॉकिंग मेडिटेशन कर रहा था तो बहुत थक गया था, तो मैंने कहा चलो थोड़ी देर बैठ जाता हूँ, और मन भी एकदम सॉलिड था, रॉक सॉलिड, बिल्कुल कलेक्टेड था, बहुत अंदर शांति थी। हालांकि वो गांव जहाँ वो जंगल में थे उसके पास ही गांव में खूब शोर शराबा हो रहा था, डांस शादियां हो रही थी, तो उसका कहते हैं उसका आवाज मुझे सुनाई दे रही थी लेकिन उसको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा था। जब मैं चाहता मैं उस पर ध्यान दे सकता था, जब मैं नहीं चाहता तो ध्यान नहीं देता था, तो मन एकदम शांत हो जाता था, शून्य में चला जाता था। तो इस तरह मुझे स्पष्ट समझ हुआ कि मन और मन के ऑब्जेक्ट बिल्कुल अलग अलग हैं। आप चाहें तो जो ऑब्जेक्ट है उसको ध्यान दे सकते हैं, चाहें तो उनको ध्यान ना दें। तो इस तरह से एक बहुत परफेक्ट इनर बैलेंस आया। होता है लेकिन फिर मैं थक गया तो मैंने सोचा थोड़ा आराम कर लूं, लेटने लगा तो फिर देखा कि मन धीरे धीरे अंतर्मुखी हो रहा है, अंतर जा रहा है, सारा शरीर जो है खुल गया एकदम, शरीर के बहुत अंदर अंदर मन जाता चला गया, और फिर धीरे धीरे वो अपने आप वापस आता चला और बाहर की कॉन्शियसनेस जागी। मैंने सोचा ये क्या हुआ भाई, तो मन से अपने आप जवाब आया, ऐसी चीजें होती रहती है, उनके बारे में चिंता नहीं करनी चाहिए, समझने की जरूरत नहीं है। और फिर दूसरी बार वही बात हुई, तो जब ये दूसरी बार फिर मैं अंदर जाने लगा तो सारा शरीर जो है टुकड़ों में बट गया, जिसे जगह भंग ज्ञान हुआ, सारा एक पार्टिकल हो गए उसके, और एकदम शांत संपूर्ण शांति सारे मन में छा गई। काफी देर तक वो अंदर रहा, फिर धीरे धीरे बाहर आने लगा नॉर्मल कॉन्शियसनेस। और फिर तीसरी बार ऐसा ही हुआ, तो इस बार जब अंदर गया तो सारा ब्रह्मांड ही ऐसे लगा जैसे सारा ब्रह्मांड ही कि भंग हो गया, सारे टुकड़ों में बट गया, सब कुछ समाप्त हो गया, पूरा शून्य में हो गया, कुछ रहा नहीं। तो फिर काफी देर तक मन स्थिति में रहा और फिर धीरे धीरे बाहर आने लगा और नॉर्मल स्टेट में आ गया। तो उसके बारे में कहने लगे कि मैं क्या बताऊं, कैसे समझाऊं, कि उसके बाद चित्त में अगाध शांति और जो कभी भी डिस्टर्ब नहीं होती ऐसी शांति अनुभव होने लगी। तो मैत्री ब्रह्म विहार का अभ्यास करते हैं थोड़ी देर। मेत्ता जो मन का एक गुण है, जिसे अदोष भी कहते हैं, द्वेष की एब्सेंस, द्वेष का ना होना, वैर का ना होना, दुर्भावना का ना होना, तब ये सब विकार मन में ना हो, तो शुद्ध चित्त का स्वभाव है कि उसमें मैत्री का भाव रहता है। तो जैसे हम अभ्यास करते आ रहे हैं, ताकि धीरे धीरे उत्तरोत्तर मैत्री का भाव पुष्ट हो, पहले अपने प्रति, फिर प्रियजनों के प्रति, फिर आरक्षण करने वाले, हमारे रक्षा करने वाले देवताओं के प्रति भाव क्या, और फिर समस्त प्राणियों के प्रति क्या भाव, कि हम वैर से मुक्त हों, द्वेष से मुक्त हों, दुर्भावना से मुक्त हों, चिंता से मुक्त हों, और अपना भरण पोषण सुखपूर्वक कर सके। तो ये शब्दावली त्रिपिटक से ली गई, तो उसी का रिपीट करते हैं जैसे हम करते आ रहे हैं। और करते शब्द बोलते समय मन के अंदर भी वो भाव मैत्री का और उसका असर शरीर पे क्या हो रहा है उसकी ओर भी ध्यान। अहंगवेरोमि अव्यापञ्जोमि अनिगोमि सुखी अत्तानं परिहरामि। ये अपॉर्चुनिटी है हमारे मन में जांचने की, कोई भी क्लेश मात्र भी किसी के प्रति वैर हो द्वेष उसको त्याग कर मैत्री ब्रह्मविहार का अभ्यास। मम माता पितु आचार्य च ज्ञातिमित्ता च स ब्रह्मचारिणो च अवेराहोन्तु अव्यापज्याहोन्तु अनिगाहोन्तु सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। अपने माता पिता को याद करके, आचार्य गणों को याद करके, सगे संबंधियों को याद करके, मित्रों को याद करके और हमारे धर्म भाइयों धर्म बहनों को याद करके सबके प्रति यही भाव कि सभी वैर से मुक्त हो, दुर्भावना से मुक्त हो, चिंता से मुक्त हो और सुखपूर्वक जीवन यापन कर सके। आरक्षा देवता भूमट्ठा देवता रुक्षट्ठा देवता आकाशट्ठा देवता अवेराहोन्तु अव्यापज्याहोन्तु अनिगाहोन्तु सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। हम उसको अनंत करते हैं। सब्बे सत्ता सब्बे पाना सब्बे भूता सब्बे पुंगला सब्बे अत्ता भाव पर्यापन्ना सब्बा इत्यो सब्बे पुरुषा सब्बे अरिया सब्बे अनरिया सब्बे देवा सब्बे मनुष्या सब्बे विनिपातिका अवेराहोन्तु अव्यापज्याहोन्तु अनिगाहोन्तु सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। अपना सर्कल ऑफ मेत्ता धीरे धीरे बढ़ाते हैं। अपने से शुरू किया, परिवार, मित्र, अपना शहर, देश, सारा विश्व, सारे लोग। तो जितना जितना हमारे चित्त की क्षमता हो महबत होने की, उतने उतने प्राणियों को उसमें मैत्री के भाव में व्याप्त करते हैं। और फिर देखते हैं शरीर पे कैसी तरंगें हो रही हैं, और फिर इन तरंगों को दसों दिशाओं में जैसे हम करते आ रहे हैं उनको फैलाने का, हर दिशा में रहने वाले प्राणियों के प्रति यही भाव। मेत्ता सहगतेन चेतसा एकं दिशं परित्वा विहरति, तथा द्वितीयं तथा तृतीयं तथा चतुर्थं इति उद्धं मधोतिरियं सम्पदि सम्बद्धताय सम्भावन्तं लोकं मेत्ता सहगतेन चेतसा विपुलेन महद्गतेन अपमानेन अवेरेन अव्यापञ्चेन परित्वा विहरति। तो भगवान का मार्गदर्शन है कि हम इस प्रकार विपुल, महान, असीम मैत्री भाव में विहार करें, बगैर किसी भेदभाव के, बगैर किसी वैर के, बगैर किसी द्वेष के, सभी दिशाओं में, सभी प्राणियों के प्रति और अपने प्रति। थोड़ी देर उसका अभ्यास करते हैं। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वबुद्धानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वधर्मानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वसङ्घानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते। अरहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो भगवा बुद्धं भगवन्तं अभिवादे साक्षातो भगवता धम्मं नमस्सामि सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो संघं नमामि।